Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
Celebrating 9 years of podcast excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Yes, that was in fact Nature Boy Ric Flair on the top of the show, which you will now hear at the top of, for the foreseeable future, you will hear his voice at the beginning of every Wrestling is Real podcast. I got the drop because he was on Cannabis Radio on the Empire program, cannabisradio.com. If you want to go and catch the show, I'll have that out in the very coming weeks. But I got to ask a couple questions of him through the host because I didn't take the show for myself. I actually could have taken the interview. And the reason we had Ric Flair on was because he's now promoting his own line of cannabis products. The same people that created Tyson 2.0, Ric Flair Drip Cannabis. It's now a product line. They're doing woo chews, so chewables, edibles. Plus they'll have tinctures, flowers, vapes, and all these other things going on. So that's all set up. And I got to ask him a couple of questions. I might run one of the questions I asked him on the show, which I scripted for the hosts to ask. I asked him 2 questions. I think I'll go ahead and play those on Wednesday's program. But either which way, I wanted to give you the backstory on that. Now, let's move along to why we are here. I'm recording this episode tonight, 11 o'clock. Of course, we know that the Clash at the Castle pay-per-view happened earlier this afternoon, but I did watch it live. And I'm hearing everybody, all my fellow podcast brethren, the TikTokers, Wrestling Talk is all incredible, perfect, spectacular, fantabulous. I get it. Stupendous, right? This was a good show. It's an A show, but this is also a B show. Okay, this is what I'm saying. This is a B-level show. This is not one of the major 4, or actually the major 5, because if you want to count, really, there's like 6 major pay-per-views now on the calendar when you look at day 1 with the major 4 and Money in the Bank. At the moment now, Clash at the Castle was, for what it's worth, being in Cardiff, doing the show, and having a 62,000 plus crowd. Listen, the electricity was in the stadium. There was a lot of excitement. That crowd was eating it up to have a show in the UK of that magnitude. So Cardiff Wales showed up, and it was wonderful. It made the show really great. But when you look at the card itself, the card was really good. And coming off of Triple H having a pretty expansive interview with Ariel Helwani for BT Sport, which I got to talk about a little bit in the interview itself on the show here. It was really good. Listen, this show, top to bottom, was a solid card of great matches. I'll say that right now. That's not the issue. The storytelling within the matches was great. It's still going to be the bigger picture for me. And, part of that is the main event picture is what was going to stand out to me for the most part, because that was the match that was definitely solidified before Triple H came into place. He set up all the other matches. The mid-card, listen, fantastic. The mid-card's getting built, but they're not touching the main event. They did what they could to give Drew McIntyre such an epic exposure. They brought back the Broken Dreams music for a great montage of his entire career, which they've encompassed throughout this whole month leading up to this match. They gave him a great match. You get the Solo Sikoa debut, part of the bloodline. That becomes the gamut that takes Drew away from getting the chance to win the match. Plus, you had Austin Theory coming out with the cashing of the briefcase, which didn't happen because of Tyson Fury. Listen, the incorporation of Tyson Fury was great. The Solo Sikoa debut was very good. There's a lot to be said there. What they did was they extended the whole thing with Roman Reigns because they don't have a plan for him. Probably they're not planning to take the belt off of him until WrestleMania. There is no time that would be better than others, and I don't think that WWE is going to do something unpredictable taking the belt off of him somewhere on a TV match or setting up some match at a pay-per-view coming up between now and day one at the earliest. Because I don't think Extreme Rules we're going to get anything there. We're not going to get anything for the Survivor Series. And day one will be the next pay-per-view after that, right? Because they're not doing a TLC as far as I know. We don't know if there's a December pay-per-view. And so you see all that. And Roman Reigns, we got a great match. They don't have a plan for anything to do with that belt. And as long as Roman Reigns continues to be the part-timer that's going to hold that belt, we need somebody else to be in place for that. And they haven't done that yet. And even in the commentary for Riddle and Rollins, Matt Riddle, he's won U.S. titles. He won the U.S. title. He was a tag team champion. But he needs to do what he needs to do to get to that next level. And that's what I feel like some of these other stars are at as well. But we need main eventers. And that's a crucial part right now. But Triple H, when it comes to it, he has the right mindset from what he said in the interview about what he needs to do to build those stars to make them special. Like, that's something he obviously was paying attention to what Vince was doing this whole time and how things handled. So I appreciate that part. I mean, the interview was fantastic. Go ahead and watch it, please, by all means. But the card was meant to continue to further and foster a healthy mid-card. That's what happened tonight in the 6 matches we had, because the Roman Reigns factor was never going to be a factor. He wasn't going to lose those belts. The Usos did not have to defend their belts tonight. Not at all. Other than that, no title changes, by the way. For a night, for people that felt really good about this, we had 3 title matches on the card, no title changes. When I look at Impact Wrestling to do their B-level pay-per-views that are not the major 4, the quarterlies, it's just kind of like that, which is a good format to go by. Listen, everybody was happy at the end of all this, which was great. But it still comes down to, you will have some mid-card storylines that will be built up. Listen, the women's titles were focused here. Great. And they have a plan going with place with that. And they have some players in here that you can see that they're trying to do things with. They're trying to correct some things that might not have worked out right before. I mean, you see people's names getting back. You see Imperium getting back together. The Judgment Day has been restored to something very strong right now. Now you have a new member, most likely with Dominik. All that works. And you brought some reality to the mix. The Rollins Riddle match had a whole lot of reality to it, a whole lot of realness to it. To me, there's a lot of Triple H influence in this, and it was great. Don't get me wrong, but I'm going to continue to look at its mid-card momentum, and that's going to make a lot of the core audience really happy. But to get the rest of that audience, listen, you want to get the 2.3 million viewers, you can get to that peak while Monday Night Football is going on, and SmackDown getting the audience they can get, maybe 2.5 million viewers. Fantastic. But we know, more than anything else, this short-lived momentum will change. WrestleMania season. Listen, what's been happening right now is that everything's been shored up. This is the same thing that happened with Paul Heyman when he had things shored up with Monday Night Raw as executive director. Because when he was able to get control of the pen, the ratings got a little bit better. The storylines might have been out there and kind of wonky and crazy, but we were getting good matches. We were getting things that were giving some stir of excitement. What's happening now is we are getting the NXT Black and Gold infusion right now of this product. You know, JD from NY, I listened to him a little bit, and I listened to some other people. JD from NY referring to this as like very much similar to a takeover. 6 matches on the main card. Everybody getting time for their matches. Yeah, but this is where Triple H has to think bigger. This is the short-term end of the deal. To make the mid-card more important is absolutely crucial for the TV product and crucial for the pay-per-views. Because what you did with the pay-per-view, most likely, if Vince were still running the book here this time around, you might have had 2 matches that would have mattered. Because eventually, I think Well, no, we would have had 3 matches because I think Riddle and Rollins, Edge and Mysterio versus Judgment Day probably would have happened here because it was going on. And Reigns and McIntyre. Those were 3 matches that were probably destined to be on the card if Vince were still in power. That was probably going to be set in place, but we might not have liked where things would have gone with it. But instead, we had the change with Liv Morgan getting Shayna Baszler as an opponent, the Damage Control faction coming in, which is a whole Triple H thing, Gunther now being accompanied with Imperium and making Sheamus a serious contender for the Intercontinental title. And then that's really what it was. That's everything that encompassed everything for tonight. And you further storylines on Raw and SmackDown that people are going to watch this week. It's the formula that you had that I'm pretty sure Triple H should have been able to go and do if he even used the NXT formula to get the mid-card important again. And everybody worked really hard. Everybody had great matches tonight. There was nothing that I felt like was off. And you've had things that are very significant when it comes to what happens on TV that might not happen on the pay-per-views. The women's tag team tournament was shored up. And now we got Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah set up there. The Miz and Bobby Lashley, I think I saw. What was it that's coming up as the match? I think I just saw there's a steel cage match tomorrow for Raw. Yeah. What is that again? Yeah, The Miz issuing a challenge to Bobby Lashley. And to make sure that Loomis is no longer a factor, he's going to have a steel cage match, which will probably still get Loomis and Miz as an angle going anyway, somewhere down the line. And then maybe we'll have a mixed tag where Indy Hartwell makes it onto the main roster where Miz and Maurice take on Index, right? That could happen too. Bad Bunny being talked about for negotiations to have him back after he gets off his big Un Verano Sin Ti tour, which has been making buku money. The guy's making probably $1 billion off the tour. I mean, come on. He's making some money. Selling out Yankee Stadium, selling out Hard Rock Stadium here. He's just going crazy. And so Bad Bunny's going to come back and he's going to probably do a little bit of wrestling again. Logan Paul, after he stops complaining about Andrew Tate, will probably come back and do some wrestling. Ronda Rousey, he just reinstated. So there's some things right there of some attractions to have, which are nice. But in the show itself tonight, let's go into the card itself. I missed Madcap Moss of the Street Profits defeating Austin Theory and Alpha Academy. Didn't see that match. Into the main card itself. So Damage Control, which they didn't name by name, but you saw it on the graphics. Bayley, Dakota Kai, and Io Sky. I did that. I remember who was it that said that same way too? Defeated Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, and Asuka. Now, Alexa Bliss is now back into her full original goddess look in the pink and blue again, like before. She looked great. Asuka, they did a thing where it was the fusion of where Bayley's team had all the chemistry, or Bianca's team did not so much. And they played that up as a storyline here. And because of that, that's where Bianca now has to deal with Bayley as a serious threat to her Raw Women's title. Great match, 18 minutes together. They did some tandem moves together, which was good. The tandem, back body drops, right? That was good. Bayley having to go ahead and take. It was very interesting that the crowd, which was basically like a hooligan crowd of 60,000 plus in the UK, decided to go ahead and hijack the show and fawn over Bayley like she's still a babyface, going with the "Hey baby, Bruce Chanel" kind of shtick, and Bayley having to go and play heel and say stop it, that she doesn't like that anymore, which is kind of interesting. But people were happy to go and see Bayley back, especially in the ring in this kind of in a pay-per-view setup, which was nice. The purpose of this 6-woman tag, was meant to be so that Bayley could get the upper hand on Bianca Belair and force the feud instead of just fostering a feud all of a sudden. You could have started the feud back at SummerSlam, but the 3-on-3 was to set things up here So now you have Bianca and Bayley nicely seasoned up for a feud, which could go on through the end of the year. The match that I thought was the match of the night, in my opinion. Now, listen, Rollins and Riddler was great, but the match of the night to me, among everything else, was Gunther and Sheamus. Man, this match was so different than anything I see in any other show. Like, we don't get this World of Sport catch as catch can, brutality just like slapping away. This was like Wahoo McDaniel against like Ric Flair here. Like the whole brutality of it all. Very old school. It was a wonderful match. What a story. And Sheamus was like the all-star in this. Gunther was fantastic. That you could see they got worn out. 20 minutes these guys went as well. You would have never gotten a match like this under Vince. Ever. This is the thing where this is the part that I like where Triple H does. Getting these two brutes like this, and you build the storyline up. Nothing necessarily of the factions that they had with each other being involved in the match so much, except for the beginning of the match. The focus was on these two. And you could just definitely see these guys were smacking the shit out of each other. You saw that, you could hear the thuds, you could hear the punches, you could hear a lot of stuff. They definitely left each other with marks. Sheamus was fantastic, man. Probably would have been the best match he's had since his title run as WWE champion. Like, this was just great. And this is why I always said Sheamus was underused for a long time. This was such a good thing to see. And look at what the crowd did at the end of that match. Look at the standing ovation, the adulation they gave this guy after that grueling match he had for 20 minutes. Gunther was like, we know that Walter is good. We know that this kind of matches we have, but it is against the right opponent. I like these kind of matches here. There's not a lot of guys that you could put in this match that would fit right. Like, I'll tell you what, if Claudio Castagnoli was still in WWE, then Gunther would have been one of his opponents. Cesaro and Gunther would have been a match, but not now. Like, I even said to myself, Lord Steven Regal would be proud of this match, but probably would have been loving this match. We don't get this kind of stuff anymore. And I also took it for granted because Finley would kind of give us his style. Lord Steven Regal or William Regal gave us his style. Squire Dave Taylor, the Blue Bloods, and all this kind of, like, it was just, you don't get that kind of stuff anymore. It's a European style, it's a British style, and it just is good. And the crowd ate this up. So into this. Definitely into Sheamus. Because Gunther is more the German, Austrian kind of thing where, the way they kind of put the ring general kind of deal, it's like, yeah, they're going to go with the guy is from the UK, from Ireland, the Dubliner. Him. That's the one they wanted. And he was so over with this crowd. And it was nice to finally see Sheamus in the right kind of match that fits him best. It was just good. Like, this is a match more than anything else that I'll remember of this night. That's the one that will stand out to me, which is different than everybody else. In a way, you might see a match like this. I don't even know where you'd see what promotion gives us this kind of match. It's World of Sport or Revolution Pro, I guess, but we don't get these kind of matches, man. So old school, it just felt like a throwback. But I love that shit. Gunther getting the win, but but he barely escaped that match. Great storyline. And honestly, Gunther made Sheamus shine. Like, Sheamus got over, and he should be made more important now. Like, there's something to be said about that IC title and the story they told about how he never gotten that title. He needs to be back into the title picture somewhere. He really does. I don't give a shit about what anybody says with the whole Brawl and Brutes thing. Look, you just really legitimized that guy in this match. All the goofiness, all the other stuff that was going on, the Fight Night stuff. This was Fight Night. Like, I mean, really, you gave these guys a lot of time, and this match just stood out. And I'll tell you, it definitely overshadowed Liv Morgan and Shayna Baszler, which they gave it time. And Liv Morgan, much like they showed when Shayna was about to go and put the submission on Liv in that promo that they had for the contract signing, that Liv Morgan was able to go ahead and smash Shayna through a table, is that somehow Liv Morgan finds her way, she scraps her way to the win. And that's the storyline that goes with her, and it makes sense. But you know that Shayna Baszler can still come on back and go after Liv Morgan after this. But Liv is being booked strong, which is the important thing here, is that I thought Shayna Baszler would get the win here. I thought this would be a title change that would happen, but it did not. But I mean, Shayna Baszler still comes out of this strong somehow. Like, I would like to think that's still what's going on now with this. And while in the meantime, they were just saying about the fact that Baszler kept working on the arm, you know, picked the body part, submission, and they kept doing what they could do with this. And it was good. Like, Baszler still looks very strong, but it's like there were a couple of matches they booked tonight to make it where there were some shortcomings of the characters that, because of their aggression, because of their the mindset that they had, and what they did where they couldn't stay focused in the match, led to their downfall, was a number of these matches they had tonight. That's where the Riddle match came into play, and that's definitely what they did with that. Same thing with Damage Control over Belair, Bliss, and Asuka. Like, it's those shortcomings, those intangibles that cause the downfall to make these teams or those opponents lose the match to the winners tonight. So they did that good. Edge and Rey Mysterio, we get the heel turn now with Dominik Mysterio. They did a good job with it. Didn't do it during the match, which is what I thought was going to happen. I figured Judgment Day was going to win. The playing up of Rhea Ripley and making sure in the packages how they really focused on how Dominik was just immune to doing anything to Rhea Ripley, that I believe somewhere, somehow, Rhea Ripley is kind of gotten Dominik wrapped around her finger. And I think that is the storyline going forward with Judgment Day, that Rhea Ripley is going to have the control and is going to bully the shit out of Dominik. Because right now, he made the turn, but he's going to probably be this confused young guy that doesn't know what he's doing, because he can't just go full heel here. He's just going to go to the dark side. So it's not in terms of a heel turn, he just turns evil. He's going to the wrong team. He's joining Judgment Day, and Rhea Ripley will probably be the ultimate reason why he does, because Rhea Ripley will bully him in, will force him in, almost like a dominatrix kind of feel to it, which is what they've been doing so far. I'm your poppy, right? That's the storyline here. That's good. I like it. And it keeps it interesting. And I don't know, will Rey Mysterio be able to get his son to snap out of it? And what happens to Edge? Like, they really did some kind of job where Edge and Rey Mysterio did a great job. They were so over tonight. I was one of those few things that they talked about how Edge and Rey Mysterio won the tag team titles in 2002. And you know what? That's when I wasn't watching. When I was during my point of protest, like, I just was, March 26, 2001, I'm not watching WWE. I just wasn't going to do it. Because I knew, let the invasion angle pass, let some other things pass, let's see what happens. Maybe another organization comes in to create competition. And it wasn't until TNA in 2005 that I said, okay, let me start kind of peeking in on the programming again. But for 3.5 years, I did not watch any of it. I didn't watch Eric Bischoff as their general manager. I missed all that. It just didn't matter. The Hollywood Rock, I missed all that too. Stone Cold turning heel as part of the invasion and joining Vince. Like, I didn't watch that either. Running out of ideas, trying to stretch the Attitude Era to the end. When you don't have your competition against you, I just knew there was going to be some changes there. People were going to still be into it, but I'm not going to watch that one show because it wasn't going to satisfy me. I needed to be able to watch WWE with competition. And, sure, I might have missed Brock Lesnar's debut, and I would have missed Randy Orton in his early point, or Batista in his early point, things like that, Deacon Batista and all that. Yeah, sure, I might have missed some of that. but I just didn't want to watch WWE style, and that was it. Because there were no other wrestling promotions that had come up yet. TNA was a pay-per-view company, and Ring of Honor couldn't find on TV. And, YouTube wasn't as easy to get around to find all these shows. Just weren't get out there, not as much as we have now. Or we are blessed with programming now. So Edge and Mysterio get the win, they did get the win, and then we get the turn, which was good. And so this storyline has to continue. Then the second match that I would say would be the best of the night would have been, listen, and don't get me wrong, Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns was great. 30-minute match. They told a great story. But for me, it wasn't going to be anything extra spectacular because I knew they were going to have a good match. I just had a feeling I was going to see a good match out of these two, but what was going to bum me out was the outcome. I predicted Drew to win, but it didn't happen. Anyway, back to Seth freaking Rollins and Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle, puce with anger, was just so pissed off. The whole thing with the divorce of his wife and not seeing his kids and all that shit, the reality brought into place. Almost feel like this is it was kind of like a throwback to Jeff Jarrett taunting Kurt Angle in real life. Remember that shit? I mean, come on. All you needed was that part that Seth Rollins was dating Camille Riddle or whatever her name is. All you needed was that. There was an affair going on. But of course that didn't happen because Seth and Becky. So you get that here and it's Seth freaking Rollins, just give him the situation. He's been an all-star this year. He really has. What it comes down to is with Cody Rhodes and with Matt Riddle, Seth Rollins has done an amazing job of really personifying top babyface. You want to get Matt Riddle over. This feud right now with Riddle is Riddle's going to get over big with this. It's amazing where this is the thing where before you get to Roman Reigns, they gave him that match and he lost. And now he's dealing with Seth Rollins, and eventually Rollins is going to help build Matt Riddle big enough to go after the belts again. This is a nice role for Seth Rollins, don't get me wrong. But I'm always of the opinion that Seth Rollins needs to be a main eventer again. If you are going to run out of opponents for Roman Reigns, it's time to bring Seth Rollins in and have that match. They already teased it before. It needs to happen. We need to have that. We need Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And somehow, Roman Reigns is, I guess, maybe I don't know. I mean, they can't be the faces, but I guess they kind of are. They're tweeners, right? Pretty much. I think you make Seth Rollins somehow turn babyface or a tweener, and you draft him to SmackDown. And he goes after Roman Reigns. Because I think Rollins is definitely at that level. He's been in the main event before, and he can be there again. Especially talking about Undisputed Universal title. You're talking about the first, the second title holder. There's that. I mean, something to be said there. And we know there's other people that are main eventers eventually that are going to probably get popped up after a while of getting them worked into the mid-card again with Kevin Owens. And you wait to see what happens with him if Bobby Lashley becomes relevant again, high enough to be in the main event. If Austin Theory is able to actually successfully cash his Money in the Bank briefcase somewhere, somehow. We have to go and see what they're going to do with all that. But Matt Riddle, in another 2 years, you could see him going after the titles. Or if they split them by then. But you can't worry about Riddle now being in that main event title picture until after WrestleMania. At the earliest, it can be that for him. So what you got to do is keep working with Rollins and Riddle. The Extreme Rules match, you might get a blow off next month for that in Philadelphia. And really make that match one of the marquee matches to go on. When you're talking about Roman probably won't even have a match next month at Extreme Rules. That probably won't even happen. What do you do next? Like going to Extreme Rules match with Roman Reigns after he already had to deal with Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam and the last man standing match. I don't think you're going to go more extreme than having the damn, having the Caterpillar pick up the damn ring. I don't think you can go much farther than that. And so, yeah, Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, you can go ahead and talk all you want about that match. It was great, but what they're doing right now is Drew didn't get the win. And that's okay. But it's too bad that Drew McIntyre doesn't have, there's a ceiling for him right now. Because he should have been able to go ahead and win. And now I guess you parlay off Drew with Solo Sikoa. So what they did was they did the over-grandiosing of Brock Lesnar losing to Roman Reigns. And now Drew McIntyre loses thanks to Solo Sikoa. And it was a really good job on how they debuted him because it would look like it was a Uso underneath the hoodie. But couldn't tell because I said, oh, it's one of the Usos. No, it's Solo Sikoa. As soon as you saw the blonde hair, you knew it was. And that's great. And I didn't make mention of that, Gunther how has Imperium now as much as a team, as much as he can have them together. But I do like that Imperium is now the way it is, keeping Ludwig, Kaiser, and Gunther as their roles in general. I actually like that part. Because I think just keeping Imperium as the team as they were and not having some individualization of these characters definitely stands out better for them. That I think that was a good thing that Triple H decided to keep that. I actually enjoyed that part. So look, Roman continue to hold that belt. Just tells you there's no immediate plans to drop the belt for Roman Reigns. And there is no set person that they're ready to go and put that on. That if it's The Rock, it has to be the one that drops the belt. So I don't even know what you're going to do, but I don't know what you do. So anyway, all in all, still a good pay-per-view. Very good. An A pay-per-view, right? No problem with that. Now let's get into the interview that happened before Clash of the Castle. Ariel Helwani meets episode with Paul Levesque, Triple H, 75 minutes, a sit-down interview, and they covered so much. So they talked about everything with his medical scare, with the heart surgery, and knowing that how close he was to death, to near death, was shocking. So we're glad to see Triple H is doing much better. He's healthy now, and he's able to do what he's doing. He's got a good mindset for the business. He was definitely very cordial and very appreciative of Vince. He put Vince over greatly, put Stephanie over greatly. Makes all the sense in the world. Put over Nick Khan. And while he said what he said, of course, the clip that everybody kept pulling out was the fact that with NXT going up head to head against AEW, he still called NXT a developmental system. But we all know that. I mean, the scheduling decision to have NXT scheduled 2 weeks before AEW's debut, put it on Wednesday night when it was on Tuesday night. Oh, no, it was on Wednesday nights, right? Decided to go and put the show. Was it on Tuesday nights before? I think it was on WWE Network. And then decided to go ahead and all of a sudden take it off the network and put it right on the USA Network. All of a sudden like that? It was for competition. It was supposed to be a stopgap to slow the growth, stunt the growth of AEW, which it didn't do. And with this talent that they had on there, there's a number of those talent right now that are already on the NXT, that are on the AEW roster now. Okay. So if they were just about ready to be good enough to go to the AEW roster, you talk about Andrade or Malachi Black or Adam Cole or Kyle O'Reilly or Swerve Scott or Keith Lee, right? Come on. I appreciate Triple H saying what he said. I understand. He has to do that. He's a company guy through and through. But we all know that the way that show's all set up, NXT was supposed to be able to go ahead and make AEW suffer and maybe not even make it past the first year. But they did anyway. Okay. So regardless of that, the interview was very good. I definitely say recommend to listen to it and watch it. Other than that, Triple H is the right mindset when it comes to what he wants to do for his character, for his stars. Obviously said, I guess you could just basically see he's not ruling out a return for Sasha Banks, for Bray Wyatt. We've heard Braun Strowman is now making his way back to the company. I mean, bringing some of those stars back is smart, but will they be able to season them up high enough to become main eventers? Like, where are your main eventers? Where are the people that are going to surround and going to be pawns for Roman Reigns to take that belt off, the belts off of him after 734 days? There's no answer for that. And that is going to be, that's going to leave a ceiling on the growth of the company to build that mainstream audience out, because they're still dealing with the part-time problem. I mean, if you want to build main eventers, are you going to have to call some people to go ahead and bring them on board? Or are you going to build the mid-card enough to kind of sustain things? Like, when you get to WrestleMania time, you're going to have to rely on Ronda Rousey, Logan Paul, Bad Bunny. Are you going to have to deal with that and take up 3 or 4 matches? Or are you going to do enough with some of these stars? Maybe some of the mid-card will take some of that. But you still need a good solid 3 to 4 matches on each night for WrestleMania to really be stand out, especially for Hollywood. Like, you got to really step it up. The thing is, we have to see what the plan is going to be going the Royal Rumble into WrestleMania season. What's the WrestleMania season plan? Is Rock going to be available to take on Roman Reigns, which will take care of one night? What do you do about the other night? There's a whole lot of things that are left questions in my mind. I can't help but think about that. I want answers from them. I want to see where they're going to go with that soon enough. But I like the show. And for those out there also complaining about the fact that, oh, look, see, 6 matches. We didn't have to have all these other people on the show. And there's 15 matches on AEW All Out. Well, okay. But remember, AEW only does 4 shows a year. Notwithstanding the Battle of the Belts and some of the featured shows they normally do on their programming, right? So I get that part. So anyway, they solidified things for AEW All Out. I'm not going to go through a big preview because obviously maybe some of you are going to already have watched the show by the time you hear this. But either which way, we know that Hangman Page and Dark Order advanced to the finals, the trios tournament final, to take on Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. So that's going to be set up on the line to get the first ever AEW Trios champions. John Moxley versus CM Punk has been set up for the world title for AEW. Interim Women's World's title, Britt Baker versus Hikaru Shida versus Jamie Hayter versus Toni Storm. TBS title, Jade Cargill versus Athena. Jay Lethal, Motor City Machine Guns, and a great promo segment on Rampage for their match against FTR and Wardlow. Jericho and Danielson face to face at the end of the Rampage, and a very crazy setup for the end of that show. Casino ladder match with Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, Penta Oscuro, Rey Fenix, Dante Martin, Andrade El Idolo, Rush, and the Joker. And who knows who's going to be the Joker? Swerve in Our Glory versus the Acclaimed for the tag team titles. Ricky Starks versus Powerhouse Hobbs. They set things up for that. Christian Cage, Jungle Boy, House of Black versus Miro, Darby Allin, and Sting. And then 3 matches for 0 Hour. Eddie Kingston versus the Stone Pitbull, Tomohiro Ishii. For the FTW title, Hook versus Cool Hand, Angelo Parker. And Pac versus Kip Sabian for the AEW All Atlantic Championship, all in 0 Hour. That's a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. So I'm sure I'm going to be probably on here recording this sometime after midnight tomorrow night. And of course, the show will be out there first thing in the morning for all of you listening in. So I'll be back in about 24 hours watching All Out. If I get a chance to watch Worlds Collide, I doubt it, but I'll probably just read the results because I don't think I'm going to watch much of that. I just think that most likely all the NXT UK belts are going to be absorbed by the NXT stars that are champions now, and I don't think Tyler Bate is going to beat Braun Breaker, and I don't think Mandy Rose is going to lose her title the NXT Women's title. I don't think it's going to happen. So, things like that. So again, 24 hours from now, I'm back with another Wrestling is Real podcast. Enjoy AEW All Out because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at wrestlingisreal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.